In 1933, in a coal town in eastern Pennsylvania, a woman would take her husband's pay envelope, and before she cooked a single meal, she divided it into a row of ordinary envelopes marked rent, coal, milk, and burial, and she did not spend 1 cent that was not already assigned to an envelope. That year, the U.S. unemployment rate was about 24.9% of the labor force, roughly 1 in 4 workers, and in some local markets, bread often cost around a nickel to a dime. So a single misplaced quarter meant a family went without bread for 3 days. Not luck, not a rich husband, not a government check. What she was doing was quietly building the exact system the banks would spend the next 90 years trying to make you forget, because a family that counts its own cash in envelopes on a kitchen table does not need overdraft fees, does not carry a balance, and does not pay interest to anyone. Almost everything you picture about surviving the Great Depression is wrong. Number 25 is the one your own grandmother probably still does, and the banks lose money every time she does it. Number 13 was declared reckless by every financial institution in the country. And number 1 is not a trick at all. It is the one habit that made all 24 others possible, the reason the banks fear it most. Hit subscribe, because what you are about to hear is not the cozy hard times nostalgia the sitcoms sold you. Let us count down. Number 25, the envelope budget. The picture the modern app sellers paint is of a helpless generation who could not manage money without a screen telling them what to do. The record says the opposite. Depression families ran a cash system that removed the possibility of overspending entirely. Cash was stubborn, and it forced you to see exactly what your spending looked like. With median family income in the mid-1930s around $1,160 a year, roughly $22 a week, every dollar had a name before it was ever spent. A homemaker would write the bill and its monthly cost on the front of each envelope, and when the coal envelope was empty, the buying of coal stopped, full stop. The reframe is the part the banks hate. The whole method works precisely because it takes the credit card and the just this once out of your hands. Number 24, sharing housing costs. The magazines sold the single-family bungalow with the white picket fence as the natural American arrangement. 1 household, 1 mortgage, 1 family. The record from the 1930s is crowded and shrewd. With U.S. unemployment at about 24.9% in 1933, and countless families losing homes to foreclosure, relatives doubled and tripled up under one roof, and boarders were taken in for cash. Renting a modest house ran around $28 a month at the end of the decade, an enormous sum against a median income near $1,100 a year. So, splitting that rent 2 or 3 ways was often the difference between keeping the lights on and joining the migration on the road. The reframe, what the glossy ads called overcrowding, the ledgers called survival arithmetic, and it kept whole extended families housed on a single paycheck. Number 23, cooking from scratch exclusively. The advertisers of the era were already pushing the modern miracle of the packaged, the canned, the ready-made, convenience as a sign you had arrived. The Depression kitchen ignored the pitch entirely. Families cooked from raw ingredients, canned their homegrown produce, and raised their own chickens, not as a lifestyle statement, but because buying ingredients instead of finished products was cheaper and let you control exactly what went into each meal. When a loaf of store bread cost a nickel to a dime and flour for a homemade loaf cost only pennies, baking your own bread cut the cost of that staple by more than half. Do it twice a week across a year, and you have saved several dollars, real money when a week's wage was 16 or 17. The reframe is that the old-fashioned scratch cook was not behind the times. She was running a lower-cost operation than any convenience product the advertisers could dream up. Number 22, keeping a price book. The picture the stores wanted was a trusting customer who took the shelf tag as gospel and never questioned a number. The Depression shopper kept receipts, tracked what things had cost last week and last month, and calculated with a precision that would make a modern financial advisor weep. Families knew exactly how much flour this week's bread required, how much milk the children needed, and how much coal it took to warm the house until the next payday. When milk ran around 55 cents a gallon and a dozen oranges a quarter, a homemaker who logged prices could spot the week a store quietly raised a staple and shift her buying to the cheaper source. Saving even a nickel a day on tracked staples adds to about $18 a year, more than a full week's manufacturing wage recovered simply by writing numbers down. The reframe. The price book turned an ordinary shopper into someone the store could not fool, and a customer who cannot be fooled is a customer the banks and merchants would rather you never become again. Number 21. Bartering skills for goods locally. The nostalgia image is of neighbors swapping pies out of pure small-town warmth, a sentimental picture with no economics attached. The record is a hard-nosed, cashless economy. With paychecks slashed across the early Depression, cash was so scarce that people traded labor and skill directly. A man who could resole shoes fixed his neighbor's boots in exchange for eggs. A seamstress altered a coat in trade for a sack of potatoes. When a pair of shoes cost around $2.50 against a weekly wage of $15, a single repair traded rather than paid for might have preserved a day's wage. The reframe, barter, let families move value between each other without a single coin passing through a bank, and no institution earns a fee on a mended boot swapped for a dozen eggs. Number 20. Negotiating every price. The advertisers had already trained the middle class that a marked price was fixed and dignified, that haggling was something only the desperate did. The Depression household haggled without shame. With money scarce and merchants equally desperate to move stock, families negotiated at the butcher, the grocer, the coal yard, and the used furniture dealer. A pound of hamburger listed at 15 cents and a pound of bacon at 35 were not carved in stone when the seller feared the meat would spoil unsold. Shaving even a dime off a $2 weekly grocery run, week after week, returns roughly $5 a year, a third of a week's wage clawed back by simply asking. The reframe. The shopper who treats every price as a starting offer keeps money in her own envelope instead of handing the full margin to the store, and that habit is exactly the one modern fixed price, tap-to-pay retail was built to kill. Number 19, reusing everything. The sitcom kitchen was spotless and disposable. Buy it, use it, throw it away, buy it again, the whole engine of a consumer economy. The Depression home threw away almost nothing that was not truly beyond repair. Flour sacks became dresses and dish towels, worn-out clothes were cut into quilts, broken furniture became a weekend repair project rather than a reason to visit the store, and household items served 3 or 4 purposes before they were finally discarded. This was not about being cheap. It was about recognizing the true value of things when a shirt cost a full $1 and a week's wage was 16. A family that got a second life out of every sack and jar might avoid several dollars of purchases across a year. The reframe, reuse quietly, severs the loop the advertisers depend on. The loop where every worn thing sends you back to the store with your wallet open. Number 18, teaching children about money before they could read. The rosy images of carefree Depression children shielded entirely from the family's money troubles. The record shows children pulled into the arithmetic of survival early. As far back as 1920, banks like the State Farmers Bank of Belvidere, Illinois, were enrolling children in a Christmas banking club specifically, in their words, to develop self-reliance and the saving habit. Children were handed a few pennies to divide, sent to the store to stretch a nickel, and taught to count change against a written list before they could read a sentence. When a candy bar and a loaf of bread each cost a nickel, a child learned fast that one choice meant going without the other. The reframe. A generation raised to respect a nickel grew into adults who could not be sold easy credit, which is precisely why the lesson was allowed to fade. Number 17, walking instead of driving. The car ads of the era sold the automobile as freedom, status, and the future of the modern family. A new Ford ran roughly $700 at the end of the decade. The Depression household did the math and walked. With gasoline around 10 cents a gallon early in the era and cash almost non-existent, families walked to work, to church, to the store, and kept the car parked or sold it entirely. Half a month's rent could be swallowed by keeping a car running, so legs were the cheaper engine. Walking to save even a dime of gas a day returns about $36 a year, more than 2 full weeks of a manufacturing wage. The reframe: the family that walked kept its money out of the fuel pump and the finance company both, and a car loan was one more leash the banks were only too happy to sell. Number 16, the layaway system. The picture credit card marketers painted for decades was of layaway as a quaint embarrassment, a poor relation to the shiny convenience of buy now, pay later plastic. The record is that layaway was born of the Great Depression and reached its peak popularity in exactly those years, precisely because families did not have the cash up front for gifts and larger goods. A shopper put a small deposit on an item, the store pulled it from inventory and held it, and the buyer paid it off in installments over weeks. And here is the crucial part. They took it home only when it was fully paid, with no interest charged at all. On a pair of shoes costing $2.50 or a coat costing several dollars, layaway let a family plan the purchase without borrowing a cent. The reframe: layaway is the exact mirror image of a credit card. You finish paying before you own it, so the interest that fattens the banks never exists. Number 15, saving before spending. The advertisers preached the opposite gospel. Enjoy it now. The modern American deserved instant gratification, the good life on the installment plan. The Depression family paid itself first. Before a dollar went to any want, a portion was set aside, often into an envelope or a bank club, and only what remained was available to spend. It sounds impossible on a median income near $1,100 a year, yet families did it, sometimes saving a dime a week when a dime was real money. A dime a week banked steadily is more than $5 saved in a year, a third of a week's wage set aside by a household that had almost nothing. The reframe: saving first flips the entire logic the credit economy runs on, because a family with a cash cushion does not need the bank's emergency loan at the bank's emergency rate. Number 14, patching and mending clothes. The magazine fashion pages sold the endless new wardrobe, the seasonal update, the shame of being seen in last year's coat. The Depression closet was darned, patched, resoled, and turned. Gaps in socks were problems to solve at the sewing basket, not reasons to shop, and a torn shirt was an opportunity to practice darning skills passed down through generations. When a single shirt cost $1 against a $16 week, extending its life by a year of careful mending was the equivalent of protecting a real slice of the paycheck. A family that mended rather than replaced even a few garments a year kept several dollars in the envelope. The reframe: every patch was a small refusal, a quiet decision that the advertiser did not get to decide when a piece of clothing was finished. The wearer did. Number 13, keeping cash reserves at home. This is the one every bank in America would tell you was reckless, then and now. Keep your money with us, they said, where it is safe and modern. The Depression family had watched that promise collapse. Nearly a third of the nation's banks failed between 1930 and 1933, and when a bank went under, the passbook savings inside it often simply vanished, wiping out a lifetime of thrift overnight. So families kept cash at home, in coffee tins, sewn into mattresses, buried in jars in the yard, tucked behind bricks, because unexpected expenses were not really unexpected, they were just life, and keeping money liquid and in your own hands was essential. When a bank could evaporate with your $18 inside it, $1 in the flour tin was worth more than $1 in a failed vault. The reframe, the people who lived it, learned the hardest lesson the banks never advertise, that a deposit is a promise, and a promise is only as good as the institution making it. Number 12, buying day-old bread. The bakery advertisers sold the warm, fresh, just out of the oven loaf as the mark of a caring household, with yesterday's bread quietly framed as beneath a respectable family. The Depression shopper went straight for the day-old rack. A fresh loaf ran a nickel to a dime, and the day-old bread sold for a fraction of that, often for pennies, while being perfectly good for toast, sandwiches, and bread pudding. A family buying 2 loaves of bread a week that saved even 3 cents a loaf on the day-old rack banked around $3 a year, a fifth of a full week's wage recovered from bread alone. The reframe. Freshness was the premium the seller charged for vanity, and the family that bought yesterday's loaf simply refused to pay for the calendar. Number 11, making your own cleaning products. The advertisers of the age were pouring money into branded soaps, powders, and polishes, each one a separate purchase with a separate margin, each one presented as a modern necessity. The Depression home mixed its own from a handful of cheap staples. Vinegar, baking soda, and plain soap cleaned floors, windows, laundry, and dishes, saving money while avoiding the parade of branded products. Where a household might otherwise buy several different cleaning goods across a year, mixing from bulk basics cut that spending to a trickle of pennies. The reframe. A bottle of vinegar does the work of a shelf full of branded bottles, and every branded bottle you do not buy is a margin the manufacturer and the store do not collect from you. Number 10, never buying on impulse. The entire machinery of the advertising industry existed, and exists, to manufacture the impulse, to make you want, suddenly and urgently, the thing you did not know you needed. The Depression household was nearly immune to it. With every dollar already assigned to an envelope, there was simply no loose money for a whim. The purchase had to wait, be discussed, be weighed against the coal and the milk. Families lived without wallets full of plastic that could make every wish an instant reality. So wanting a thing and buying a thing were separated by days or weeks. That gap, the waiting, killed most purchases before they happened, and a household that avoided even one unplanned dollar a week saved better than $50 a year, 3 full weeks of a manufacturing wage. The reframe. The pause between wanting and buying is the single cheapest financial tool ever invented, and the entire modern one-click tap-to-pay economy is engineered to erase it. Number 9. Growing a victory garden. The nostalgia frames the Depression garden as a charming hobby, a bit of wholesome exercise in the backyard. The record is that these were subsistence gardens, insurance policies planted in soil. During the Depression, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and state extension agencies actively promoted gardening and canning as a way for the out-of-work to feed themselves, and cities ran relief garden programs on vacant lots. In New York City alone, a campaign backed by the Welfare Department and the Works Progress Administration produced over 5,000 gardens on vacant lots, and those gardens returned $5 worth of vegetables for every dollar invested, totaling around $2.8 million of food by 1934. For a family, a backyard plot could shave real money off a grocery bill where a dozen oranges cost a quarter and vegetables ate into a $2 weekly food budget. The reframe, dirt under the fingernails, meant dinner was handled, and food you grow is food no store and no lender ever gets to price. Number 8, avoiding debt as if it were disease. The lenders of the modern age sell debt as a tool, a lever, a sign of a healthy, credit-active life. The more you borrow responsibly, the better, they say. The Depression household treated debt as contagion. Credit was not readily available in the 1930s, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise, and families who had watched neighbors lose farms and homes to foreclosure wanted nothing to do with owing money. They paid cash, avoided debt, and stayed current with their expenses as a matter of survival. With farm prices collapsed and foreclosures everywhere, a mortgage or a loan was the trapdoor that swallowed families whole. Refusing to borrow meant that when hard times deepened, there was no lender waiting to seize the house. The reframe, to a generation that saw debt take everything, staying out of it was not caution. It was self-defense, and a nation of people who fear debt is a nightmare for an industry that sells it. Number 7, buying in bulk from farmer cooperatives. The grocery advertisers sold the convenience of the small packaged portion, the branded box, the middleman's markup dressed up as service. The Depression family cut the middleman out. Buying staples in bulk, including flour, beans, potatoes, and sugar, directly from farmers and cooperatives meant paying closer to the source price, far below the per-package cost at the branded shelf. With farm prices so depressed that farmers were desperate to sell anything at all, a family with a little cash and some storage could buy a season's worth of a staple at a steep discount. Buying flour by the large sack, rather than in small amounts, could easily cut the per-pound cost, and across a year of baking that difference ran to several dollars, meaningful against a $16 week. The reframe: every layer of packaging and branding between the field and your table is a layer of markup, and the cooperative buyer simply refused to pay for the layers. Number 6, paying cash for everything. The pitch, repeated for a century, is that cash is primitive and plastic is progress, that a modern person swipes, taps, and floats a balance. The Depression household paid cash, full stop, because in the 1930s Americans did not have wallets full of plastic to make every wish an instant reality. And the psychology behind it is real and measured. People spend less when they hand over physical cash than when they use a card, because pulling bills out of a wallet hurts in a way that tapping never does. A family paying cash felt every dollar leave, and that friction was itself a budget. The reframe, the discomfort of parting with real money, is a feature, not a flaw. And every cashless, frictionless payment method sold to you since is engineered to remove exactly the pain that once kept you solvent. Number 5, using the library as a free university. The image the era's magazines sold of self-improvement was one you paid for: the correspondence course, the encyclopedia set bought on installment, the paid class. The Depression family walked to the public library instead. With money for entertainment and education gone, the library offered books, skills, and knowledge for nothing: how to garden, how to can, how to repair, how to sew, how to build. A family could learn the very trades that saved them money: mending, cooking, carpentry, from library books at zero cost when a single how-to purchase or a class would have cost dollars they did not have. The reframe. The library was the one institution that handed a broke family real capability and charged them nothing for it, and knowledge you get for free is the one asset no lender can repossess. Number 4, insulating the house with free materials. The heating and building advertisers sold the modern furnace and the manufactured insulation as the mark of a comfortable home. The Depression family stuffed the walls with whatever was free. Newspaper packed into wall cavities and under floorboards, rags stuffed around drafty window frames, cardboard tacked over gaps, because coal cost money and every scrap of retained heat was coal not burned. Families calculated how much coal it took to keep the house warm until the next payday, so cutting the draft directly cut the coal bill. Where coal was a named line in the family envelope budget, free insulation could trim that envelope by real dollars across a hard winter. The reframe. The family that insulated with yesterday's newspaper turned trash into warmth and refused to let the coal yard set the temperature of their home. Number 3, the Christmas Savings Club. The picture the retailers loved was of the joyful holiday splurge, the generous parent putting Christmas on credit and paying for the magic later. The Depression family used a bank club to pay for it in advance. Christmas clubs were widely used by the 1930s precisely as an incentive to save through hard times without giving up the holidays. Depositors put in a small set amount each week all year, sometimes just a dime, and the bank released the lump sum with a little interest right before December. The scale was real. In Berks County, Pennsylvania, banks paid out $500,000 to 15,000 club members in 1934, and by 1938 that had grown to $1.1 million to 26,000 holders. A dime a week saved across the year built roughly $5 for gifts, paid in cash. The reframe. The club account bought Christmas with money already earned and set aside, so the holiday arrived paid for, the exact opposite of the January credit card hangover the retailers now count on. Number 2, buying used before buying new. The advertisers built an entire culture around the new car smell, this year's model, the shame of the second-hand, and the hand-me-down. The Depression family bought used first, always. Clothing, furniture, tools, automobiles, toys, household goods, all were bought second-hand, traded, or inherited before anyone considered paying full price for new. With a new car near $700 and a new shirt a full $1 against a week's wage of $16, the used market was not a compromise. It was the sensible default. A family that bought a used coat for a fraction of a new one's dollar price and did that across every category of goods kept a running fortune in its own pocket over a year. The reframe, the premium on new, is largely a story the seller tells, and the family that let someone else pay for the new car smell simply declined to fund the story. And number 1, paying bills early or on time, without exception, the habit that is not really a trick at all, the quiet discipline that made every other habit on this list possible. Look back at the 24 you just heard and ask what they were really for. Not the coffee tin, not the garden, something underneath all of it. The advertisers and the lenders sell you the opposite of this one harder than anything else. Pay the minimum, carry the balance, skip a payment with no penalty this month, float it, roll it over, a whole industry built on the late fee and the interest charge. The Depression household paid every obligation early or exactly on time, every single time, without exception, because a generation that had watched banks fail and homes foreclose understood that your word on a debt was the last thing you owned when everything else was gone. When money was checked out of an envelope to cover the rent, the coal, the milk, it went out before it was due, not after. And here is why this one sits at the top, why it is the reason all the others existed. The envelope budget, the cash reserves, the saving first, the horror of debt, the price book, the walking, the mending, the garden, every last one of them exists to make this final habit possible, to guarantee that when the bill came due, the money was already there and already promised. A family that pays on time never pays a late fee, never pays penalty interest, never watches a small debt balloon into a large one. And across a lifetime, that discipline is worth not a few dollars, but a whole financial life free of the slow bleed the banks depend on. On a median income near $1,160 a year, with unemployment at 1 in 4, these families paid what they owed when they owed it. That is not thrift, that is dignity, made out of arithmetic. The banks would love for you to forget it, because a customer who always pays on time and never carries a balance is a customer they cannot make a dime of interest from, and that, more than anything, is the habit they hope you never remember. Tell me which of these your own mother or grandmother actually lived by, down in the comments. The coffee tin in the cupboard, the flour sack dress, the day-old bread, and the Christmas Club dime, and tell me whether you think her quiet, invisible discipline would still beat a budgeting app and a credit card in 2026, or whether we quietly traded a whole generation's hard-won genius for a monthly subscription and the privilege of paying interest to the very banks that once let their savings vanish.